the biggest benefit of a house hack for someone who's brand new, like I was at the time, is if you don't know anything about managing properties, fixing anything, how to do leasing or tenant relations or any of that stuff, it's one of the best ways to practice and to just test the waters.
This is basically like mid 2020 at this point.
Yep.
You're sitting at around 50, 60 doors. You've realized it's time to walk away from the law firm. How did you scale from that 0 to 50 door point?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the very first property I bought was using the house hacking strategy. And just to be clear, so everyone knows what that means, basically you would purchase a rental property that has some ability to rent to potential tenants. And you use some part of that property, a fraction of that property for your own living purposes. So at the same time as you're able to generate rent income on that property, you're also able to offset or eliminate your living expenses. So to me, for most average people who are unfamiliar with real estate, first time starting out, maybe thinking about real estate, how can I get into it? House hacking is one of the best ways to go. And the biggest factor of that, which we haven't talked about yet, is that the financing that you can get from banks for house hacking, for owner-occupied properties, is so much more favorable and easier to obtain than non-owner-occupied rental property financing. So in my case, I put 10% down, but I certainly didn't have to. Right now, you can get an FHA loan for 3.5% down, and you're going to have to probably cover some closing costs, but you can also build those closing costs into a seller concession where essentially it gets rolled into the loan and the purchase price of the property. So it makes it a lot more affordable for average people to get into real estate investing. And the biggest benefit of a house hack for someone who's brand new, like I was at the time, is if you don't know anything about managing properties, fixing anything, if you don't know a thing about how to do leasing or tenant relations or any of that stuff, it's one of the best ways to practice and to just test the waters if you've never done it. And that was the thing for me. Like, I was an attorney, but I was a green attorney. I was very new, and I had to learn everything from the ground up. And so I read some books, learned some theory, talked to some people, but until you're actually doing it, you're not going to know. And because I was living next to my tenants, and because I also was selective with the location and the type of property I was buying, I had a very positive experience, which allowed me to, use that as a stepping stone to the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. So like the area was good, so it attracted good tenants. The tenants were good, so they were taking care of my property as opposed to trashing it and doing things that would cause more maintenance and repairs. So I didn't have as many maintenance and repairs. And because they were living next door, they were also on even higher level of good behavior when it came to being my tenants. So it really was just sort of a very sort of synergistic experience for me. So I thought, okay, I can do this again. I can do this. I can go to the next one.
Well, and you mentioned that your first deal was a house hack. Was it like a traditional house hack where it's a single family and you're renting out 3 other bedrooms and living in one? Or was it like a duplex where you were living in one side and renting the other?
Yeah, so it was a duplex, and I was specifically looking for a multifamily because you're right that a traditional house hack would be renting out rooms inside of a single family home. To me, that was never that appealing. I was in a relationship already at the time with my girlfriend at the time, was now my wife. We wanted privacy. That's one of the biggest things with regard to house hacking. You want to have your own space. And to me, I always felt like it made more sense to have a multi-unit property, to own a multi-unit property and live in one of those units and rent out the other ones when it came to house hacking, versus having roommates or having, Airbnb, strangers coming in at various points of your ownership. So if that makes sense to you, like, I just thought that would be a better way to go. And whenever I talk to new investors, I think it really depends on where you are in life. And if you have a family, or if you have a girlfriend, or if you have, a spouse, it probably makes sense to not have to share personal space, kitchens, living rooms with others, and have your own space. Versus if you're in college or just out of college and you have a bunch of roommates and friends and they want to chip in, or they'll pay you rent and they'll live in your house with you, well, that's a different story. So I think it really depends on who you are and what stage of life you're in.
Well, and I think that the way that you did it with was it a duplex or a triplex?
Two family, yes, side by
Two
side
family.
duplex. Yeah.
That's honestly one of the biggest recommendations that I have for first-time home buyers when they're getting ready to buy a home is buy a duplex, live in one unit, rent the other unit out so it pays most, if not all, of your mortgage and then some. Because at the end of the day, it's taking an expense off of your plate while still helping you build equity, while still helping you get established, have your own place, things of that nature. And it's so easy to buy a multifamily, a 2 to 4 unit multifamily here in the Western New York region, at least, that it's almost a no-brainer for anybody looking to get into real estate investing at any level. So it's interesting that you went with a duplex versus the more traditional. What we hear whenever you hear house hack, it's always oh, I live in one bedroom and I have 17 people living in the other
Yeah.
bedrooms around me.